Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Coach Laurie Kelly. Coach Kelly started her coaching career as a graduate assistant at Minnesota State University-Mankato. She has experience as a head coach at Binghamton University and Northern Arizona University. She is currently approaching her 14th season as a head coach at Gustavus Adolphus College. Coach Kelly has broken records as a player and at pretty much every stop as a coach. She is the winningest coach in Gustavus women's basketball history, and most recently led the Gustavus program to win their fourth consecutive MIAC playoff championship. In the last 4 years combined, the Gusties have lost just 7 games against conference opponents and have collected 4 consecutive seasons of 22 wins or more. Coach, I could have added many more accolades, but I wanted to make sure there was time for you and I to talk. So thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Elsbeth.
All right. So if we go, let's go back to the last AAU tournament you attended. What's maybe one or two things that an athlete did on the court that made you write their name down on your list of athletes that you're interested in?
Yeah, I always tell prospects that sometimes it's the things that you don't think coaches are watching. After a mistake, do they run back and get back in transition? Do they play hard on defense? How they talk to their teammates? You can see things like how quick they get the shot out of their hands. You can see some skill stuff that you're evaluating, but sometimes it's the intangibles that draw you to somebody. And I think for every coach, it's really different on what that is. For me, I look for things that their work ethic, how hard they play, how they interact with their team on the floor. I think the older I've been coaching, the more particular I am about the type of person that I bring in long before I look at their academics or even their athletic ability.
Yeah. Why? I'm interested to know, why is that? Was there something that happened throughout the years, or, pinpoint a little bit of that transition for us?
I remember in my early coaching career, my very first graduate assistant position, I worked for a veteran coach. Her name was Joan Campbell Anderson. And she said, the best advice I can give a young coach is to make sure you recruit good people before you recruit a good student, and then follow them up by their athletic ability. And I think as a younger coach, particularly as I remember at Northern Arizona, I had a situation where I took a player where I felt like athletically was very God-given ability, just natural. And I knew I could build her into a Division I player, that she had gifts that were allowing her to be that type of player. But I noticed things like the way she interacted on her teammates, how she dropped her shoulders when things didn't go her way, maybe snapped at a ref. And I think that those are the type of things, that affect a team's chemistry. And my foundation right now as a coach in my later years of coaching is I really want to bring a group of young women together. I want to work towards a common goal each day. And I think that doing that through just hard work, commitment, teamwork is really important. And when you see red flags, that individualism or the undertone of the way they speak to a teammate, or maybe they're looking in their stands and their parents are yelling at them what they need to do. I think those are red flags that come up. And I think sometimes I tell my friends that coach, you need to listen to the red flags. They're there for a reason. And so I think that there's times, someone said to me once, an associate AD said, would you rather have a group of student athletes that work really hard but aren't very talented, or a group of very talented young women that don't work very hard? And my first response is, well, can I have a little bit of both of them, I guess? But the reality is that I think that as a coach, if you can get people to buy into hard work and commitment and working together, I think as coaches, you can develop their skill set. I think it's harder to change someone's work ethic. And especially when coaches are watching, you have to think you're almost on your best behavior as a prospect, because all these seas of coaches are watching you. And if you're going to behave that way when you're being evaluated, how are you going to behave when you're not being evaluated? So, so I think that's, for me, the foundation starts with just really good people. Academically, you want to make sure you're going to set them up for success. So I think that depends on where your academic institution lies and whether that's a good fit. And then lastly, you look at them, especially at the Division III level, what their ability is and what they can do athletically for you.
Yeah, I think that was a beautiful answer and it makes complete sense. They say like addition by subtraction, right? How do you differentiate between maybe a, 14, 15 to 18-year-old not really understanding how important that stuff is versus, oh, they're going to negative or impact us negatively? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you really know. I do think that, like I said, a lot of times the saying that, they never, all those sayings that they never change their spots or
Yeah.
their stripes or whatever it is. I do believe people have the ability to grow and learn. I know I'm a much better coach today than I was 20 some years ago when I started. And some of that was just trial by error. In my household growing up with my two young daughters, I have two daughters now that are college and just graduating. And, we used to say, they'd say, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry meant I'm not going to try to do it again. So I think as players, as coaches, your players, they're going to be sorry. Hey, I didn't mean to turn that ball over. Yeah, I should have dove on the ball for that loose ball on the floor. But I think as they learn and grow, that's the fun part as coaches. You get to see them continue to develop and grow. And so sometimes they're just not in a very good situation, maybe in their AAU or high school program they're in. Maybe that's not the kind of culture that's being developed. And you have to kind of look beyond some of that at times and take a gamble on someone that you think that you can build and grow into the type of student athlete that they're capable of being. So I think that there's a gamble too. I say gamble, but an investment in people. You invest in them. And most of the time I feel like that investment really pays off, but it's a two-way street. Coaches and players, like you all have to be working together towards common goals and they got to believe in what you're trying to do together. And if each person's willing to have some leniency towards each other, I'm not a perfect coach. I make a lot of mistakes, but if they know my intent is for a good reason, just like I know as players, their intent is good, I think there's forgiveness and growing with those opportunities to learn.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think of, so I was talking to Coach Bobby Morgan, and she said, I'm waiting for the day for a student athlete to send me a highlight film where they make a mistake and they show their mistake response. And yeah, so that whole answer kind of makes me think of that. Is that what would you do if an athlete kind of sent you a highlight film and on that film it was like maybe them turning the ball over or something, and then, they took a charge on the other end or they got a really good stop?
Yeah, I think that would be great. I'm not a highlight film person, so for all the prospects out there listening, I could take the very strongest player on my team and take the probably the person at the last seed in the skill level, and I could put a highlight film together. And I don't know if you'd see that big a difference if you take their very best moments. I do believe you can see some things on a highlight film that may trigger you to say, could I get a game film? So I usually ask prospects to, they want to send highlight, that's fine, but I just don't think that's how for me, I want to see them. You send me a game where you think this is kind of one of my better than average games or where I am. When I watch film, it's more about running the floor. Do they hit screens? What's their ability to see from an IQ perspective? It's not necessarily how many points they make. I can go watch a AAU game against someone that goes 0 for 5 from 3-point line, but know they're a really good 3-point shooter. You can see how quick it comes out of their hands, their confidence, just their structural form. And it's just a game they didn't make shots. I mean, I'm from Minnesota. I'm a Timberwolves fan, so obviously cheering for the Timberwolves right now. Anthony Edwards is great, but he went like 0 for 7 or 0 for 10 before he finally made a shot. I still think he's a great basketball player. So I say that about prospects too. When coaches are watching, yeah, we like to see you make a shot, but it's not about the shot going in or not. It's the shot you take. Was that a good shot? What's your form look like? I think there's other ways you can evaluate and still see really good things in a player that maybe didn't have the best game that you actually saw them play.
Mm-hmm. So with the highlight film, you mentioned there are a couple things that may pique your interest to say, ooh, I'd like to see a full game film. I'm guessing based on that answer, it's more like technical skills, like, ooh, that looked nice coming off their hand, or ooh, they did a really nice drive, or you saw a couple different layers, like they drove the ball, they shot the ball, like a catch and shoot, maybe they, off the dribble. Is there anything else that you would add to that would like pique your interest to say, oh, I want to see a full game?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you never see any defensive clips on a highlight film. And the reality is I have players many players over the years that the majority of their minutes have been put on the floor because of their defensive ability. They pressure the ball. They're like the glue that holds our team together. Offenses will go astray. They just will. It's just not a day that the ball goes in. Your defense isn't like just having a defensively bad day. Defense is heart and effort. That's like the foundation of where, as a team, you can win games that you're not playing well offensively by just playing good team defense. And so there are players that can buy into that. And I think when they do that, it's what kind of brings that whole team together on both ends of the floor. So on a highlight film, they might show me 10 threes they made in a row. Maybe it took them 200 shots to make the 10. So you just don't know. You're going to, like you said, I'm going to look at their form. But again, there are people that have really not very good form, but they make a lot of threes. I guess I don't care. They go in, right? So I think that it's, you see some people send highlight films with them passing the ball. Again, I could say the same thing. You might turn it over 10 times and have 10 assists. You're going to show me the 10 assists. So I think that I look more at, and then the other thing is you never know who they're playing against. So as a high school, that somebody you might not know that you get a highlight film from, I don't know the competition level that they're playing. So again, it's really hard to evaluate unless I know that. So I'm always, obviously, I love that in person, but you can't always do that. So for me, I think when you get a highlight film, show pieces of what you do that's well. If there's something like, for me, sometimes it just might be what I see on the written sheet. They're 6 feet tall with a 6'2" wingspan. They really look the part. You see them running the floor like a deer. Now, you can tell maybe they don't have great skill set to finish. I use Rudy Gobert. I mean, he is long and good, but he does not finish great around the rim sometimes. And I'm screaming at the TV, but you can teach that as a coach. So that's why you say to that player, I could take that player. Someone sends you a film as a point guard, you can see their ability to handle the ball, keep their eyes up, change direction, see plays develop to have an assist or see how that play develops and their leadership on the floor. So there's other things you can do from a film that you're not necessarily seeing in a statistical category.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Have you ever recruited a player who did not play AAU?
Yes, for sure. Probably more in Division 3 than you have in Division 1. So my years in Division 1, I would say probably not. But in Division 2, especially in Minnesota, like there's a lot of small town players that maybe financially can't afford AAU. They're in a location that just isn't feasible for them to get to some bigger AAU teams. Maybe they're dual or 2 or 3 sport athletes, so they're playing volleyball and soccer or other things in the summer. So I think that we have found quite a few players that through either a recommendation or seeing through high school that you've had the opportunity. I think if you're a player not playing AAU, you might need to do some things proactively initially just to get your name out. Or if you have a great high school coach or somebody that could help assist you, I think there's maybe opportunities for you to reach out and connect with a coach ahead of time if you're not playing AAU. But for each person, I said, yes, we have definitely had people that have never played AAU. It's interesting when they come in, it's like their junior year or sophomore year. It's the first time you see all these coaches looking at each other. Hey, who is this kid? Who is this kid? Well, it's their first time they played AAU, right? So, so I think there is opportunities to do that for sure and still be able, again, particularly at the Division 3 level, I think that's I don't say common, but absolutely something that happens on a pretty regular basis.
And from feedback that I've gotten is, like you said, some of that proactive work in the beginning of maybe identifying schools that you might be interested in. And I've heard some coaches saying going to like prospect camps, things like that, particularly like you said at the Division 3 level where maybe you're, all of I'm not going to repeat everything you just said, but all of those same reasons. The process might just look a little bit different, but it's not uncommon. So I definitely wanted to say that as well. Are there any questions? Let's say you're talking to a student athlete or their parents. Are there any questions that you wish student athletes or their parents would ask yourself or other players?
I am, again, since I've been doing this a long time, I feel like in the time that we're meeting with those parents, I probably answer questions that they haven't even asked just through my experience of letting them know that information. So I think that I always say, for me at Gustavus, my job isn't to try to tell somebody or a parent that their student athlete is should go to Gustavus. I'm going to tell them what I have to offer them, what our program is like, what we're like academically. There's certain geographic things like our size and our location, the size of the town. Those are all things that go into a student athlete's decision. Some of those I have no control over. So I think by giving them a lot of information up front about what's our culture, what do a practice look like? What is my relationship like with my student athletes? What are most of our student athletes doing upon graduation? I'm kind of talking about some of those stuff naturally in that. So I feel like even if they haven't asked that question, I'm trying to make sure I give them most of that information up front to help them make the best decision for themselves.
And is there a question that you like to ask most, if not all, student athletes that come on a visit or when you talk to them on the phone?
Yeah, I think the first thing I always want to know after you kind of introduce yourself and visit for a little bit is I kind of want to just, what is the things on your priority list that tend to be the most important to you in your decision making for college? And that's different for every student athlete. And it's about finding the right fit for them. I came from a Division III program as a player. I had one of the most positive experiences I could possibly have ever had as a student athlete. And because of that experience, I feel like I worked tirelessly to hopefully provide that same opportunity to my student athletes because it's 4 years that were four of the most special of my life. Actually just got back from Florida yesterday with 7 of my college teammates.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, this many years later, we're still like the best of friends. So it's kind of what my college experience for me was the highlight of my whole experience is finding my lifetime best friends. And I feel like that's the kind of culture I'm trying to build within my own program. And you're trying to find people that fit that too. I mean, I kind of call it's kind of like relationships. There's everybody is looking for different things. It's about finding the right person for you. It's like finding the right person, the right college for a person. So
Mhm.
I think it's important that they, especially in Division III, if you want to be a nurse and someone doesn't have a nursing program, I probably wouldn't go to that school, regardless of how much I like the coach or how much that they win or whatever. I just think it's about being a student athlete, especially in Division III, finding the right fit for you. Because if basketball went away, would you still be happy at that institution? And you want that answer to be yes, for sure. So it's really more about if you could describe your ideal situation as I say this to a prospect, what would that look like? What does basketball look like in your dream, this experience? And well, it's, maybe they're talking about their role on the team. Maybe it's the success of the team. Maybe it's the ability to have their family be able to see all their games because of the location of the school. So I guess, again, that becomes so specific for each student. You want to make sure that you find out those things and then give them the information in those areas. No, I'm in a smaller community. So if someone says, I really want an urban setting, then, hey, I appreciate best of luck to you, but I can't move Gustavus to the middle of Minneapolis. So that's what it is. It's kind of you're filtering, like they're filtering schools. We filter recruits to find just good fits, I think.
And so before, when you were talking about how you approach the recruiting, it seemed like it was person, academic, athletic. That was like the tiers that you go through. For
For
a
sure.
student athlete, what do you think those same tiers should be?
Well, I hope that academics would be first. Now, I don't know if that always is the case, but if it's not about academics, then a school like mine might not be a good fit for them. I mean, so I would say academics first. Two, I would say the social community part of it. Like, what are you looking for out of your experience at school? I mean, what's ideal for you? Do you want to, there's schools that are very residential where people are pretty much like here at Gustavus, very much a residential college. I mean, students aren't going away on the weekends. People live on campus for the majority of students. And that's kind of the culture and community we have. If you're looking for a place that you can live in an apartment right away as a freshman and it's in the middle of a downtown area and you kind of commute to school, then this isn't a good fit. So I think it still goes down to finding what you think you want. And a lot of prospects really don't know what they want. And so my first suggestion is go look at schools. Um, I love to cook. I have my team over a lot for meals. I always use the example, if you went to a buffet and they had a dessert bar sitting there and your family went by the dessert bar, you wouldn't grab a piece of dessert, take a bite and say, that's the very best dessert on the dessert bar. You would reach across the table and try your mom's or your dad's or your sister's and each time you try it, you're comparing it to what you just had. And no, I don't like that one, but I actually think I might like that one better. And I think that's a lot about going to a college. So when you visit colleges, sometimes it affirms what you think you definitely want. And it also, the other way, it says, I never thought about that. That might be something I'm really interested in. The example you could use is when people go buy a wedding dress and they think this is the dress I want, and you leave with a completely different dress than you probably ever thought you were going to get. And sometimes it's like that with a college. So I'm like, go look. The worst thing you can do is waste a half a day and then walk away saying, you know what, that's just not the school for me. And then and then after each visit, I tell prospects, you should just keep a little note in your phone. What did I really like about that school? What would I like? What were my cons about that school? And it's just kind of a natural thing. You start to like look at schools and it just naturally kind of gets down to this handful in your mind that I like all of these for different reasons. And then you take the next level, go to another visit, maybe an overnight, maybe a more extensive visit, meeting with a certain major or going to a class, spending a lot of time with the players that could be your teammates. I think naturally one just kind of comes to the top. And if it's your school, it's great. If it's not, I just really hope that they have that type of experience that I was fortunate to have and that they can have a really good 4 years at the school that they do choose.
Yeah, and speaking of desserts, I had a tres leches cake from Costco the other day, first time I ever had it, and it was so good. And I didn't think that I was going to like something like that because I don't really like cake. Do you have a favorite meal that you like to make?
I really like, I mean, I let my players like kind of choose sometimes. Obviously we do a lot of pasta loads. They would tell you I do nothing that's not homemade though. So
Okay.
I'm not like don't just like buy a jar and like put noodles in it. Like I
Mm,
make my sauce then homemade or I make my desserts homemade. I don't buy a cheesecake. I'll make a cheesecake. So
okay.
actually during COVID, because you had no content because you were home, every month we did a cooking with Coach Kelly show. And so I would
That's
take some of my
amazing.
favorite, yeah, I took some of my favorite recipes and my daughter taped it and shortened it. And so it's a weird, some of the officials in our league still say, oh, I make your breakfast egg bake or I do this. So I think if I wasn't a coach, maybe I would do something in restaurant or cooking or so, I
Oh my
guess.
gosh, I have
Yeah.
to look up these recipes or these videos.
Yeah, the videos. I've always said I'm going to start. Everybody in their family, we all have recipes that we grew up with that identify our childhood or our grandparents or whatever it is. And they're those recipes when you have to go to a potluck that you say, "Ooh, I'm going to make this because people like it." If you were to collect all of those recipes and put them in one place, it would be what a great resource. So I keep saying I'm going to start a Gustavus women's basketball cookbook, and each player has to bring before they leave. They have to bring their favorite recipes and put them together. And then you grant access to all the alumni. And then it would be a cool way to stay connected. And you meet somebody and say, oh, you're a physical therapist. I think I made your banana bread or whatever. So I think that's one of my next projects I'm going to try to put on my to-do list coming up that I think because I think people talk about music and sports. I think food is
Hmm.
that's a community thing as well. So, and in today's world, we could all use a little more community, I think.
That is a great idea. Yeah, that's beautiful. That would be so cool.
Yeah,
You should definitely do it.
I'm working on
And
that. But hopefully by next time I talk to you, I'll have that started. Okay.
oh yeah, that'll be so cool. Because yeah, like you said, it's just a win-win-win all around and just something fun.
Yeah.
All right, so if you think of some of the best players on the court that you've coached, or you can think of off the court too. We won't make it, one or the
Yeah.
other. Just think of the best players that you've coached. What was something, that maybe we don't have to talk about the recruiting process, maybe separated them, in the recruiting process, but like throughout kind of their years with you.
Well, I think obviously skill is what draws you to them. That's your first part of it. But I think the next part is the relationship part of over the phone and in your interactions, in your visits, you start to feel like a connection, like a kind of where, again, I can use, you go on a first date and you leave there saying, your friends say, what did you think? I think I would go on a second date. And I think that through the recruiting process, like I saw you play, I'm like, oh, I want to see her play again. You go and see them play again and you talk to them on the phone and they kind of had a good interest. They were interested, like, wow, this is some interesting things she said about her program. Would you be open to another call? Yeah, I would. And so then as you build that, now you're going to say, hey, do you want to come visit me? Come to my college, come see what we have. And then they're going to leave again. And I always say, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the car. You're talking to the parents. Well, okay, I liked this, or, oh, I like that they did this. So then you're kind of evaluating it with the people that are important to you, which is your parents. And at that point, you're trying as a coach, as your coaching staff, you're trying to kind of feel for what this student athlete, what kind of person they are, what kind of student they're going to be here, and what kind of athlete they're going to be in. And when they come, I would say if you're good at where you think you are, most of the time you kind of get it on the head where you're like, yep, that's kind of who I thought who they were. There are times that you get a student that is very different than maybe what you thought during the recruiting process. And as a coach, like that's a challenge for you that you just take head on. And maybe it's a better communication. Maybe it's getting them help away from basketball. It could be some mental health issues or something that's drawing them to maybe not be able to be the best they can be. So I think those are the challenges that we all face as coaches of trying to provide the best opportunities for our student athletes, help them grow from 18 to 22 years old and learn a few life lessons. But I think for me, the most important thing is my student athletes, they know I love them. I might get on them in practice. I might not be happy with the way they played, but I'm a big communicator. And I think by talking about things, it's important to know how people feel. I think my needle has moved a lot in my coaching days. And when I first started 7, 8 years ago, you get a drink when I tell you when to get a drink, and you do that. Like that was kind of like teaching toughness. Well, we know that's not it. I mean, I want my kids to drink water whenever they can grab a quick sip because we want them to stay hydrated. We know that now. And I think today's generation, they kind of want to know the whys behind things. And the mentality of, well, I'm the coach and I want you to do it because I say. I don't think that's a great two-way street in coaching. I think that understanding why we're doing something, the players buy into that more, and then it's more of a teamwork effort to go to that, to try to reach that goal. And I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes just like they do. And I think that if they know they care about you, and so for me, I'm big about build relationships away from basketball. They see me as a mom. They see me as a wife. They see me as a coach. They see me as a cook. They see me as a friend, not with them friend, but see me around amongst my friends. And so I think that that's important, that if they know that your intent is to help them reach their potential, then they understand it when maybe you slip up in the tone you said something or whatever in the heat of a conversation. But I think that there's a relationship that you build with your student athletes where my door's always open. I have treats in here. I think maybe I bribe them to come in, but sometimes I have to kick them out of my office because I got to work. And a coach said that to me. I love when I walk by your office, you have student athletes in here. I like that they can come in here and feel comfortable, but yet we can go into the gym and I can say, okay, here we go, roll up our sleeves, we're working today. And they buy into that too. So, that's kind of what we try to do here at Gustavus. It's kind of what I've always tried to do as a coach throughout my years. And I try to explain that to my prospects, and I want to try to find people that fit what I'm looking for while meeting the needs of what they're looking for.
You said something at the beginning of that, which was essentially like the one step at a time type of thing. I see you, I like it. Great. There's mutual interest. You like talking to me. I like talking to you. Let's talk again. It was such a simple way of saying it. And I think if you were listening to this, you could just kind of gloss over that part, but I just want to bring the attention back to it because that is the process. It's do I like this person? Do they like me? Can we continue down this road together?
Yes.
And I think a lot of times student athletes, it just seems so pressure packed and it seems like you have to figure everything out all at once. But it really is this slow and steady thing that in my experience and from talking to coaches and just hearing more about it is the coach will guide you through that process. They're not expecting you. I mean, yes, you have to take accountability and you have to take the reins at points, but it's also, oh, would you like to come on a visit? Great. Let's go on. You can also always ask too, but they will help you through that process. It's not like you versus them. It's you both trying to figure out if this is a good fit. And it's very simple. It's a very simple thing. And like you said earlier, it just kind of rises, right? Like it kind of shakes out. One college, one coach, one, university just rises to the top of that list because of everything else that you're doing. So I just encourage just to continue to take just one step at a time and not try to figure everything out all at once.
Yes. I think that's one of the reasons that the portal is kind of the way it is. Now, outside of NLI money and Division I and all that stuff. When you look, there's obviously a lot less Division III athletes in the portal, right? But you want people, I think the sooner you rush it sometimes, you maybe don't have all the information. And so again, it goes back to my dating example. You don't go on a first date and then the next date get married. That's a process down the road. Now you might say, I think I could marry that person, but still go through the process of getting to know each other better. You could come on a visit to a school, say, okay, I really think that this could be it. But it's still okay to keep getting more information and going through that process because either one, it really affirms that as you keep going through the process, or something comes up that says, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing for me. And I think when you do that, I think when you make that decision at the end, it's taken that opportunity that maybe you're not, you find that it's the school that you were supposed to be at, and you probably find that less of those people are in a portal because of that process. But Elizabeth, I would say that the other way, if you don't think it's a school you would want to go to, I would tell someone that earlier than later. I mean, I just, hey, listen, I really like you. I really liked, your team. Maybe I love the campus, but I don't think this is a school for me. And a lot of times coaches will say, can I ask why? And then the city's too small or the school's too big. I really want to major in this, and I feel like there's better schools that will meet my academic needs for that major. That's okay. And a good coach is going to say, that's super good. I'm obviously disappointed I'm not going to have the opportunity to coach you, but hey, I want to wish you the best of luck. If anything should ever change, please know that we would have the door open here for Gustavus. Would love to talk to you. And then they go through that process. But I think that it's fair to the coaches to say, I don't think I would want to go to that school. It allows me to send my attention to some other people that may want to be at my school. So I do think there's a partnership in that recruiting process between being honest of, I don't think this is a school for me, and this is why, wishing you us the best, and vice versa. If it's a school that at this time, I think we just have some people ahead of you, I would want people to be honest about that. And especially in the scholarship level, when I was dealing with, scholarships, when you ask somebody, well, where am I on the list? I mean, have you offered other people this scholarship? Are you the pressure? I call it the recruiting game. Like I'm trying to get you to commit, but at the same time, you're not be ready. There is a point where you feel like if I don't take the scholarship, I might lose it. So a pressure to accept. Or the pressure as a coach thinking, if I keep waiting for this athlete who's not ready, am I losing the people that are below them because they're getting ready to commit? And so there is definitely a yin and yang to that at the scholarship level, which is so nice being in Division III because you really don't have to deal with this as much unless you're talking about deadlines for applications or early applications at some schools. So again, all of us coaches have different scenarios based on what our school is and what level we are at, but we all kind of have the same tug and pull of trying to build our teams, but yet be respectful of the timeline of our student athletes.
Yeah. And what I always say when we talk about being open and honest with coaches and, an athlete might think, well, they're going to be mad at me if I tell them, or I'm going to make them upset. More often than not, you're not. Right. Like you said, they're just going to say, okay, thank you. Wish you the best of luck if anything changes. But on the off chance that they do get upset, then that kind of confirms that you made the right choice, right? Because if they're going to get upset, what do you think is going to happen when you get there and you do something that makes them mad? That's just point. Like an indication, just like you said, if this is how you're behaving when I'm evaluating you, coaches are also on their best behavior. If this is how you behave when you're on your best behavior, then what does it look like when I actually get to your school?
Yeah. No coach says, oh, we have really bad team chemistry. Why don't you come join us? Right? We all say we have great team chemistry. And so I mean, that is absolutely the truth. And I tell recruits all the time, more people say no to me than they say yes. So like that is the true statement. You might bring in 4 to 8 kids a year, whatever your level it is. We recruit more than 4 to 8 people. So more people are saying no, and that's okay too. Like, honestly, it's finding the right fit. It's the right fit for us and the right fit for them. And so, it's a, like I said, yin and yang between it, but it's really part of the bulk of college, being a college recruiter. That's kind of how you build your program, and kind of the success of your teams are based on the student athletes you're able to get and the student athletes you're able to get the most out of on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Is there a skill, once athletes get to you, let's say they're in their first year, is there a skill or a couple of skills that you feel like Man, I'm having to teach this a lot in the past couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I'm a post player for all those people out there with the 5-out dribble drives. I tell them if you're going to come to Gustavus, we're probably not going to do that. I mean, I still believe in post play for all those people out there that are post players. Like, please, I think for me, positionally, I think very people teach post skills. So because I have an offense that's designed with some post play, I think that that's an area that we really focus on from a positional part. I think in general, I think ball skills. Everyone wants to get in the gym and shoot. Everyone wants to get on the gun. Everyone wants to shoot threes. I mean, but ball skills are really, really important. And when you're a really good ball handler and you're able to use both hands, use change of direction moves, it makes you better at everything. You're a better shooter usually. You're a better passer because now you're looking up. So I think ball skills are underrated because it's kind of a monotony of standing there with two ball dribbles and so I don't think people love to do that, but the student athletes that really buy into that, I think that they make that transition pretty quick. The 3-point line, 3-point line, whatever level you're on right now is a major, major factor in games. And I think with the 3-point line being close to 2 feet back from a high school line, I do think that's one of the biggest adjustments, particularly for guards that shoot threes, that they're able to shoot a really good 3-point shot from high school, but that farther back, they really adjust their shots. Maybe they have to start shoving it or pushing the ball a little bit more. So I think that that's the players that are able to make that transition. I always say, I'm sure your high school coach doesn't want you shooting the ball that far behind the line, but when you're practicing on your own and you're trying to make that step to college, practice those longer shots to develop your strength to be able to do that. I think that's important. I think overall, I always use soccer as an example. I think soccer kind of got it right. They use a little tiny field. They don't start with a goalie. They use tiny balls and they teach skill set. We don't do that in basketball. We use a full size floor. I mean, very seldom, a lot of gyms don't even have baskets that can go down low enough. And every person wants to make a basket. So when we can't shoot a basket the normal way, we just chuck it with two hands, right? And you're throwing it and pushing it, but it goes in and you're cheering, oh, I made a basket. So I do think that sometimes I think it's harder as you come along that the guide hand where they turn their hand and push with two hands. I think they've been doing it so long sometimes, if no one really corrects it, I do think that we try to make minor adjustments in shooting to help people become more consistent shooters. And I would say those that are consistent shooters tend to do pretty much the same thing every time. And then they kind of get into a routine where they know what works, and the ball on the palm of the hand versus back, it's just little adjustments that no one's kind of corrected them very much along the way. So as coaches, I feel like in our skill development, those are focuses that we really ball skills, and shooting form, because giving tools that will help you set up to be successful. Yeah, if if you're a shooter that kind of chucks it back here, it's hard to be a consistent shooter that way. So, those are probably the skills I would say that we work on or look at the most, because I think in high school they don't have enough staff, they don't have enough time, they don't usually get enough baskets in practice. Sometimes it's hard to get skill development, and I even think in AAU practice. A lot of AAU teams scrimmage a lot of basketball. They play a lot of games, but I don't know how many programs are really committed to skill development. And so I think the programs that do that, or the high school programs that do that, those players seem to make the adjustment to college quicker a lot of times just because they've been taught those skills and practice them on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have last couple of questions that I ask all the guests. What book or podcast would you recommend every incoming first year read before or listen to before the first season begins, and why?
Yeah, you asked that question. It's so funny because I think of a lot of coaches that I've over the years, like you've read their books and you've learned things from them. There is a tennis book. This is really, I can't even, and I can't, now you're to ask me this. I think I was going to write it down. It's like The Grit, the one that's written from the 19, you know what, I'm gonna look on my phone
Is
right
it
now.
is it The Inner Game of Tennis?
It is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the first books that someone had me read. Actually, it was a tennis coach. And it's weird because it's such an old book. You think, oh, so much has changed. And yeah, it's a great book, I think. I think that mental resiliency, it's hard these days because, and I use the portal. I mean, I'm in a tough situation. Someone said, we as coaches, one of our responsibilities is to help these young student athletes learn resiliency. Well, by definition, resiliency is you have to put them in difficult situations for them to overcome that. And if you're putting them in those tough situations, and especially my friends that are in Division One, well, you don't want it to be too hard because then they're going to leave. They're going to go someplace easier, someplace they think that's going to be better. And you get there and maybe it's not, but you don't know that until they're gone. And so I think that working on stuff in mental health or resiliency training is really important. And we try to do some of that. We've done a thing through a guy down in Australia that does this thing called Athlete Tough. And his whole focus is trying to teach student athletes to be comfortable being uncomfortable and knowing that that's okay. One of the biggest problems, I think, especially young women, this fear of failure, like, these high academics, high student athletes, and, sometimes they struggle with failure in their minds, a failure. And really, it's just an opportunity to learn and get better. So I think learning that failure is okay and how you can catapult that into the next step of your life, I think is a really good thing that you learn through being a student athlete. At the time when you're uncomfortable and that failure hurts really hard, it's hard to learn that right away. It's why I think as coaches, so many times people, they're out of college 3 or 4 years and they come back, like, Coach Kelly, you were right. Like, or they send a letter saying, hey, I needed that tough love at that time. And who I am today is because of that. You feel like this purpose as a coach that you're not just teaching the game, you're really helping create and grow the next generation of citizens and community members in your area. And I think that that's a cool thing. And you kind of feel like you're a very small part of their journey into becoming these, outstanding, amazing individuals.
The hard part is you don't the seeds are planted and you never know what's going to happen, but then you might get a text or a letter, like you said, 4 years down the road. It's like, oh, okay, so that was fine. I can, let that go. I felt bad about it or whatever. And it's like, no, they're fine.
Yeah, I one of the very first jobs I ever had as a head coaching job was I was at Binghamton, and one of my very best student athletes, she's in her mid 40s now, right? And she sent me a random card from out of the blue from upstate New York. She's from upstate New York, and she sends this letter to me. And as a coach, another message out there for everybody: handwritten notes. They mean something. They are so valuable. It's not a text. It's not an email. This handwritten card that comes just saying, like, gosh, my time, I just, how much I miss you, or what an impact you had. Like, that matters. It matters for us to write those to our students, and for those students to send a note to a teacher or a neighbor that does something. It just means a lot to tell people thank you, and what you did mattered. I think that we all could use a little more of that in our lives for sure.
All right. Last question, if you could snap your fingers, or like you are in charge, you are the ruler of AAU in the recruiting process, and you could change one thing or implement one rule, whatever you want to do, you're in charge. What would it be and why?
Oh, I would take a little bit back from the powers of the AAU people, I guess. AAU has been hard. Like, it gives opportunity and for coaches to see kids. There's just such a business to it. It has become more of that. I think for me, continuing to make the student athletes the priority. There's a lot of money in AAU, and the people that run AAU organizations, this is their business and their jobs and their livelihood. But I think if we continue to stay focused on the student athletes experience, and if a kid's best level is a Division II kid, don't push them to be at a Division I because it looks good that you had more D1 kids in your organization. I mean, it's helping each student, whether they're on the top team or the third team, find, if their dream is to play college athletics, help them find that place for them. Parents, when you walk in the gym, take your hat off. Enjoy cheering for your daughter doing something they love to do, because, my daughter just graduated as a college basketball player, and I'm never going to really see her do that again. The best advice, my assistant, who's quite older than I am, says, I want you to, Laurie, take your coaching hat off, sit in the stands and watch your daughter do what she loves. And it was really great advice. Love it, because before you know that, it's going to be done. They're not going to be playing. So I think parents have a lot of influence on, get a scholarship, or I want you to go here. I mean, let them find their way, and you be there for them along the way to help steer them and guide them. But I think that if we all kind of lower our expectations a little bit and parents just kind of sit there and enjoy and cheer, AAU people help get those student athletes to the best schools and meet their needs. I think if we all kind of work together for the benefit of the student athletes, which is kind of should be the focus for us. I think that we would all be able to do a much better job working together to help do that. It's like I said, I love AAU, and at the same time, I know a lot of coaches hate it. There's a lot of power in AAU and the influence that those coaches and organizations have over some student athletes. That's important to understand that they are a neutral party, as they're the people there that are supposed to be helping the student athletes and the coaches, and kind of leave it at that, I guess.
Love it. All right. If anybody wants to keep up with you or find out more about Gustavus, sorry,
Yeah, that's
what or where can they do that? Or if they want to
Yeah.
find those cooking with Coach Kelly videos, where can they do that?
Those are Instagram, I think, on our
Okay.
Instagram. But yeah, Gustavus, yeah, our athletic department is Go Gusties. It's Gusty WBB. So for Gusty women's basketball, we'd love to have people follow us. Or if you listen to the podcast and you have interest in learning more about Gustavus, obviously we have a great website, and would love to hear from you as well.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Coach. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's EL@HOOPSTHROUGHLIFE.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.